Well, if Fonseca is looking for an exciting young striker to spice up his front line, there's a young Belgian lad in Bergamo that you might be interested in bringing over. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory. I'm joined by my very good friend Adam and Andrea. Andrea, how you doing, man?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, apart from the weekend with the whole storm, but it got me an excuse to watch all the football, and it felt like you could see the storm in the games as well. So it was just a stormy weekend, I think you'd have to say.
It always adds a bit of, a bit of a wild card into the weekend, a bit less predictability. Gotta
Yeah.
love that. Adam, how are you, man? You good?
I'm very good. I am swept away by the results in Serie A, but more importantly, a bit like Hellas's defence, it's always a breeze, right? So yeah, I've got that out of the way. Now I'm all good. Roy, how are things in Milan?
Yeah, all good. Not so stormy here. Maybe we'll get it in a week or so. But yeah, all in all, not too bad. Can't complain.
Good.
And of course, some great action in Serie A this weekend. Inter with an incredible performance and beautiful football as they beat Parma 3-1 at home. The shock result, maybe, of the weekend, the biggest result of the weekend. Napoli losing at home to Lazio. And they said Lecce then, Lazio. Atalanta beating Milan with, of course, De Ketelaere getting the goal there against his old team. And Bangagula getting a late goal to rescue Thiago Motta in a 2-2 draw against Bologna there. There'll be lots of other games and lots of other stuff to talk as well, guys. But was there anything that caught our eye this weekend in Serie A? For me, it was the fact that Papu Gomez is back training and he's down with AC Renate. I think it's down in Serie D. They've been putting him all over their socials because obviously he's on a doping ban. But it would be good to see him back in. Well, maybe not Serie A, but back in Calcio. Andrea, it'd be great to see him back, right?
Why not? It could relive that Papu Gomez song. I don't know if you guys ever heard that one when at the time. I'll have to show you after. But yeah, he's a character. So yeah, you got to keep those players in the football. So yeah, hopefully.
Absolutely. It would be great to see him back. All those memories of him at Ladeo was absolutely fantastic. Well, on that note, we're going to take a very quick break and we are going to come back with all of the Serie A action. And we are back, and it's time. Let's start in Naples. I think Napoli 0, Lazio 1. A game I really, really enjoyed this game. I felt like the first half was proper high-octane stuff. Both teams really going for it. And I was really impressed that Barone turned up with his team to actually try and kind of play Napoli off the park. It wasn't really, we're going to kind of hunker down and hope to catch something. He really tried to imprint their style on the game. Like, Andrea, how did you see the first half? What were your main impressions of this game? I thought it was for a 1-0, it was very entertaining.
Yeah, it was. I think, like you alluded to, I think the Lazio in particular, I like the fact that they stuck to their game plan, that's worked really well for them, and they were really trying to break down, which is a really toughly built, organised Napoli team at times as well defensively. So credit to them, and they hung in there as well until the very end, and they got the winner, which I think in the end they did deserve. And I think out of both teams, I think Lazio did real the ones that actually came to play, and they really showed it in their final third as well. So yeah, credit to them.
Well, Adam, we had this kind of interesting dynamics. Of course, Lazio won 3-1 midweek in the Coppa Italia with Noslin getting a hat-trick, and he would come back to haunt them again. We'll get to that point, I'm sure. But I expected Napoli to kind of learn some lessons from that performance and maybe kind of adjust a little bit or try to attack in a different way, but it felt like they were very much with their style, and that's what was going to happen, right?
Yeah, I think we're coming to that period of time with Conte where he's digging his heels quite deeply, Rory. I know I've joked about it in the last few episodes, but it does feel like the players don't necessarily fit the style of Conte's football. I felt like some of the players were lost on the pitch actually yesterday, not really knowing how to operate. I think Kvaratskhelia seems ineffective sometimes in these kind of situations, and he's not necessarily getting the best out of the individuals. It feels like at the moment, for what he's trying to get Lukaku to do, you might as well have kept Osimhen at the club. It feels like there's a disconnect in some areas of the pitch as well. Obviously, the ongoing talks with Merit, I think generally the consensus that I've seen online is that they'll actually be happy if he doesn't sign a new contract. Rahmani I thought was really poor. But generally, it wasn't the most inspiring performance, and it's not the first time we've come across a Napoli side where they've struggled in games like this, and just really lack that inspiration in terms of like attacking foresight. Especially as I think personally, I feel with Conte's side, they're very much reliant on those wing backs to provide that width and creativity. And I don't know about you, Roy, but it just felt like in this particular match they lacked that.
Yeah, well, I think Lazio did a really good job, especially with Kvaratskhelia, of just completely locking him down and making him run down like dead ends every time he got the ball. They were just shutting down all his lanes, shutting down all the paths. And I think, like you said, once you take away that clear attacking threat that is Kvaratskhelia, and then he doesn't have the possibility to then maybe like lay it off to his fullbacks, and they can't get as involved as they'd like. They did a really good job at like just closing down those wide areas, like you said, that are so key for how this Napoli team want to play. But what I felt, again, I think the Lukaku point is an interesting one, because obviously this was a fairly anonymous performance from him. But I think it kind of leads into the fact that, and it's something we've talked about before, a kind of lack of creativity in the midfield. I think like Anguissa was everywhere, and I think he actually played pretty well in this game. But he's not the player that's going to pick a lock and find that through ball or that moment of genius that's going to kind of put Lukaku through and goal. Like, it's previously been Lobotka, and he's obviously been an incredible midfielder, but in this game, at least, he wasn't really able to get that big a kind of influence on the game. Like, Andrea, do you think there needs to be more creativity in this midfield? Because I think it just felt a bit unimaginative and, like I said, very easy for Lazio to shut down.
Yeah, definitely. And I think McTominay, for example, kind of gave that at the start of the season, and because it's started to die down now we've kind of gone back to see the reality of what that midfield can really offer. So yeah, it does show that there is a lack of creativity there. But I think I completely agree with what Adam said before about Kvaratskhelia as well. And I think, him having to drop a bit deeper to get the ball, I don't know, seems to cause a bit of issue as well. He seems to be unsure of his work and what he's got to do in that kind of attacking third as well. I feel like he doesn't really have a role, and I think that's obviously affecting them a lot. But I think it does come from that midfield as well, that there isn't anyone to kind of bring it out, to kind of start the attacks and get Kvaratskhelia in better attacking positions. And, especially in those final third, that, if you get Kvaratskhelia one-on-one with a defender, he is one of the best at beating them in those areas. So I think that's kind of been what's kind of cost them, is that they've unable to kind of link the midfield to the attacking third to the striker. And we've also seen that with Lukaku as well. Lukaku a lot of time is isolated as well. So yeah, it definitely stems from that midfield. The creativity doesn't really gets further forward than it should.
And to give you your credit, Andrea, I credited you over on Blue Sky, but you've been saying it for a while that, these 1-0s, they're going to run out eventually, and they're going to run out of luck. And it kind of feels like you're right. Like, so you're not surprised, but how do they get past this? Like, because they are, like, if you look at the teams towards the top of the table, they've scored significantly less goals than all the other teams. Like, they've scored 21 goals. Atalanta, maybe not a fair comparison, but 38 goals, like Inter 34. Even Milan and Juve, 24 goals. Like, this is an issue that Napoli need to address. Is this something a fact of Conte just goes in January and says, I need another striker? Or is there something like structurally that they need to address?
I think a bit of both. I think structurally, what we've seen, and like Adam was saying before, a lot of players that are key in recent seasons for Napoli have looked like lost in this formation. So that's something they've got to fix. I mean, if Kvaratskhelia, your best player, is not being able to have the ball and do what he does best, that's a massive concern. But I also think as well, the way in which Napoli play, it always kind of falls apart in that final third. And like you said about Lukaku, like Lukaku doesn't seem like he has the ball to his, he likes to play back, his ball to feet back behind the goal, that kind of play. So they're not really playing to their strengths either. So I kind of would question that as well, not getting the best out of the players because they're not using their strengths as the key. But it would be clear that they need some sort of thing in January to kind of a striker to go with, to replace Lukaku or partner with him. But my question would be, and I still don't understand why David Neres isn't playing, because I think he's very talented and he could be a difference. If Kvaratskhelia is having an off day, someone like him on the other side could really turn it up and make a difference. And when he has played, he's done really well. So I think, but the issue is Conte's so stubborn. If he was less stubborn, they would see change, I think. I don't think they're far off either, but I think, he's quite stubborn with his player selections, which he's got to try and change a bit as well, because they do definitely have players that could change the game. So they've got to start utilising them more.
Yeah, every time, like, I don't know, I can see, like, with Politano, clearly Conte likes him because he does his doggies, he does the defensive work, he runs hard, like, he gets the kind of the job done. And clearly maybe a player like David Neres gives you a bit less of that, but does give you that attacking flair, that unpredictability that you need. I think, but I can kind of see why Conte, knowing what Conte's like, why he's being like, no, I want the guy who's going to run for 300 minutes non-stop, right? But Adam, this is now like the second big loss at home. Obviously, they lost 3-0 to Atalanta earlier in the season at home, and now they've lost to Lazio at home, kind of another title rival. Like, is this an issue for Conte? Because I think obviously they went out in the Coppa Italia this week. He's kind of painted himself into a corner with the one competition, right? The whole thing is that Antonio Conte, with a week to prepare, like, it's over already. Like, it's a big couple of weeks ahead for Conte, right?
Yeah, I do agree. I think this is making his life easier, but he's actually making himself like cocooned and piling an extra bit of pressure on top of himself by not potentially delivering. I think if you ask most Napoli fans, I think they would have accepted being in the top four. But I think the manner that they're in right now is that there's probably a high expectation that he should do even further. He should try and get the Scudetto or at least a cup. Now, the fact that they're out of the Coppa Italia, I think there's no excuses now. But the problem is, I think he will still allude to the fact that he hasn't got his own players in the door. And I think with De Laurentiis, he's not the type of person that will kind of give way and make it easy for him. So I think he's got to work with what he's got. But equally, I think the pressure's on him to do more from a kind of in-game kind of piece. I've always kind of been critical about Antonio Conte when it comes to plan A not working. He doesn't seem to necessarily have plan B, plan C. But that's also with the players like, Andrea alluded to the fact that David Neres is there. Why not use him? We've spoken about Politano. His output so far is 1 goal. And there's no assist to that either. So whilst I appreciate he does work hard, I think you've got to start looking at the outputs of these various different players and kind of work out, well, is the balance of that squad right for what we're trying to achieve? And if you're trying to expect Lukaku to run down and chase people whilst also scoring, it's just not physically possible for him to do that. Unfortunately, it's just not going to work. So he does need to address it. I think he will be given a few additions in January transfer window, but whether they'll be enough to help him in his causes, I don't know.
Well, the good news for Napoli, I suppose, is that their next 3 games before the kind of mini winter break, they have Udinese away, Genoa away, and then Venezia at home. So there's a little bit of a kind of run there before we get into the new year. Like, Andrea, that's a good chance for them to kind of get 9 points on the board and for this to become a distant memory, right?
Yeah, definitely. Or knowing Conte, maybe dropping one of those points and being like, we need something in January. but they should be okay. Yeah, they should go in the confidence. But it's big season ahead though. Still long games to go.
Yeah, it's still super tight at the top, but that win for Lazio, and we're going to talk about Lazio now, does leave them all the way down in 5th, but 3 points behind table toppers Atalanta. And Adam, let's talk about Lazio, because this was, as we said at the beginning of this, an incredible performance from them. They really turned up to play their style of football. It was proper end-to-end in the first half. I think Lazio kind of thrive in that chaos a little bit. Like when there's space to run into and when it's less predictable, this team really comes into its own. Like, who stood out for you particularly in this performance where you think, like, not only Nuno Tavares, who him coming back was a big difference, but who else kind of made an impression for you in this game?
I think he's been impressing me over the last few games, but Dele Bashiru, I thought he
Good
was
answer.
absolutely immense. I mean, obviously, Noslin is possibly the right answer as well. But actually, I thought Dele Bashararo, his performances of late have been really encouraging, and like the kind of power and strength and his runs, like he's just all over the place. His determination to just be involved in so much of the action must be really pleasing for someone like Baroni, who, I think you needed his kind of energy in that kind of game, where it's kind of end to end. You want someone to be able to dictate the ball. And I think that's almost like the kind of ideal for Conte in some respects. He needs a midfielder that can maybe dominate possession and be that willing runner. And I think he has it in abundance at the moment. So I think he's someone that really pleases me. And obviously, like you say, obviously I can't use it, but Nuno Tavares has been absolutely amazing for them. But since his reintroduction since last week, I think he's been pinnacle. I think he is the man that obviously they want to tie down now. And by all accounts, they've got a really handsome buyout clause for him. So, it looks like potentially maybe Arsenal drops it and, may regret it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how he pushes on after this season, right? I don't want to kind of class him as a one-season wonder, but yeah.
There was still some very Nuno Tavares moments in that game where he ran through the entire team, and I was like, okay, and then he just runs back and kind of passes it back to the centre back, and I was like, oh,
that was the plan.
I recognise that. So I think he's clearly a threat because he doesn't know what he's going to do, so the opposition have no idea what he's going to do, and that is kind of his USP, I suppose. But he's obviously such a key player for them, and it just completely occupies like Di Lorenzo on that wing. If you know what I mean, Lorenzo cannot push forward when you've got Tavares running at you every single time. So I think he really stood out for me. What annoys me about Dele Bashiru is that I had him in Fantacalcio. He didn't play, so I released him, and now he's playing every week. I'm very, very, very annoyed about that. But I'll try not to hold it against him. But let's talk about the big moment of the game. Now, obviously, it came pretty late on, came in the 79th minute. It looked like it was kind of going to be 0-0 this game. But then Noslin comes on and just an incredible turn and pass. And then Isaacson, just the perfect first touch, chop and finish into the far corner. And it was just the absolute reward that Lazio deserved, right, Andrea? Like a beautiful goal, and they fully deserved it.
Yeah, and you felt it as soon as it went in, it felt like the winner. Like it just didn't feel like Napoli would come back. And it just summed up the performance and the kind of tactical kind of balance of the team as well. Bringing Noslin in that moment in time, and the way it happened, it was just perfect. And yeah, I still believe they fully deserved it in the end. I really do. I think they attacked, and they were clever with their attack as well. They weren't really rushing things, and they were really good for their game on that day. So yeah, they fully deserved it.
Absolutely. I'm just really glad to see like Barone getting his flowers now in Italy as well. Like a lot of the media talking about him. And I talked to a Napoli fan the other day at work maybe, and he was like, I wasn't quite sure when Barone was appointed. I was like, this seems like a risk. He's not really been at big clubs, and now he's really being talked about as like a really exciting manager, and the job that he's doing at Lazio. And like, obviously a week is a long time in football. You don't know, but it would be nice to see him spend a few years at this club and see what he can do and how far he can take them, because it's a really exciting time. Like it's the most exciting since they've had Inzaghi, really, in terms of like the quality of coach and how exciting the football is. So I think it's really good to see, and yeah, just a massive, massive win for them. And obviously after losing against Parma in the last game week, it was just huge for them to get back on the horse as quickly as possible. And as I said, that does leave them just 3 points off top. So 3 points separating fifth to first. It kind of feels like 6th and 7th are well out of it now. We'll get onto them later. But Adam, I'm going to go to you. Does this win still keep Lazio just about in the Scudetto race?
I think it keeps them in the top 4 conversation. I'm not too sure about the Scudetto. Like I say, I think it's the depth that's going to be the issue for Lazio. But yeah, every chance of being definitely in that top 4 based on performances of late. It's been really strong from Peroni.
I like that diplomatic answer, but we only deal with absolutes in football. Andrea, have Napoli blown the Scudetto? Is it over? That's it. It's done, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there we go. See, it's over. Perfect. So let's move on to the team that are definitely going to win it. And we're going to talk about Atalanta 2, Milan 1. What a game this was. The first half was absolute chaos. So many chances, end to end, just what you expect from Atalanta. Adam, did you enjoy this game? It lived up to its billing, right?
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I think in our conversation, I think Francesco was like, "So are Milan going to roll over Atalanta?" Then and I was like, "No chance. I don't think this is going to happen." And surprisingly, De Ketelaere is the one to kind of haunt his old club, and I think, ironically, he's probably the player that they could do with right now. You know, and offer Fonseca what he needs in terms of the stylistic brand of football that he's trying to introduce. But I think, yeah, this was an interesting kind of game when you look at it in terms of patterns. Obviously, Milan go into this after 7 games being unbeaten, and yeah, I think they didn't look inspiring. They didn't look like they were connected. I think there's got to be some serious conversations about Paulo Fonseca and his future now. I think he's running on thin ice. You know, I can't still get over that they spent money on Emerson Royale. I can't work this out. I really don't know what they were seeing. What did the scouts actually say? Yeah, this is like Football Manager where you got those really cheap scouts in your game already part of your building team, and you're like, do I trust him? Do I believe him? Like, no, never do that. Never do that.
It should be a sackable offence recommending Emerson Royale. Just there and then. You want us to sign? No, okay, just get your stuff and leave. Because the marking for that final goal, I don't want to go to the end, but at the end of the game. But I just saw Lookman stupid in, and I was like, oh, who's meant to be? Oh, yeah, it's Emerson. He's about 5 yards
the one
behind.
That's looking at him.
Watching him run in. Like, just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And they spent quite a lot of money on him, right? It was like 30 million.
15 million, I think,
15 million.
down payment. So, yeah, I think it potentially rises. I don't know if it will rise in time. But, yeah, I think also, we have to call it out, Atalanta did look a bit sketchy at times as well. I think it's fair to say, as much as the scoreline kind of indicates that Atalanta did quite well in this match, yeah, it wasn't until the last 15 minutes where Gasperini makes the substitutions, bringing in Retegui and Samardzic, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, could he have done that earlier? Could that have stretched the game? Because you saw the intensity that Retegui was actually introducing and, you know, stretching that kind of Milan defence on occasions. Samardzic as well, being the more creative outlet from a perspective. And that was, I think, where we alluded to the fact that we're waiting for Samardzic to maybe bring his kind of game to this Atalanta team, and it just feels like this might be the moment where he gets introduced now into this team. So a lot of credit to the way that I think Gasperini, at this point in the season, normally he does so well, and then the team gets really tired. Whereas now it just feels like this is a continuation. If there's someone gets tired, pull them out, introduce someone else, and it feels like this is going to be something of a rhythm now for Atalanta. So it's all about keeping that momentum, winning these kind of games, because this is really massive in that respect. And now it's all about pushing on. But yeah, Rory, where do you stand on Fonseca? Because I do feel that a few results time. Do we give him till January and call it quits, or do you think he has to be given the season to see it out?
I think now you have to give him the season because there's no more damage he can really do. Like, they're not going to get into Europe. They're not good. Like, if they do, it will be the Conference League and they'll be pissed off about being in it, right? I think, like, at this point, if you sack him now or in January or whenever, you're officially declaring that you're writing off the season, right? Whereas if you say, okay, let's give him a full season. Maybe he turns it round. Maybe we start to see something towards the end of the year where we can see his idea. He's had more time to implement whatever it is he wants to do. And then if it hasn't improved by the end of the season, okay, we can cut our losses early, like as the season ends, right? Give the new man as long as possible to like get the training in for the summer and stuff. But I think now you might as well just give him the end of the season because bringing someone else in, they're already 8-9 points away from fifth. Like, even if you bring back like Ancelotti, he's not going to turn it around, right? So I think you might as well just give Fonseca the rest of the season. I know Milan fans aren't going to be particularly happy. I know they're not particularly happy, but I think at least it would give some stability, and maybe there's an upturn in form. Maybe he gets his ideas across. Like, Andrea, am I talking nonsense? Feel free to say yes. Like, how do you see this?
I think it's a fair point to keep into the end of the season, see, but I just think the only thing I'd say is that I feel like it's kind of piling up on him a bit as well, though. Like
Mm.
even the whole scandal with the referees now that he
Mm.
said, you can't say that. Like and the
Yeah.
potential ban from that now. It's like he's adding unnecessary pressure to himself as well. And I just think, you play a dangerous game where you're already under pressure, and any kind of bad result is just going to keep going back to that question: is it time to get rid of him? So I think it's at that line. So I feel like a decision might be worthwhile to do for their sake in terms of like trying to salvage a season somehow. However, I do agree with you. I don't think anyone really could come in and turn it around. So it might be worth just seeing how it goes. See if you can maybe grab a Coppa Italia or go further there. That I think that's all you can really see for now. And just, but I also think as well it's the transfer activity as well. They're going to have to see in the summer, try and bring more players that he wants. Like Adam said, the Catalara is a player that would suit them right now. So
Yeah.
they need to get a few more key players in.
Because my issue is that like the problems at Milan aren't only in the dugout. Like it's the management, it's above them,
Yeah,
it's the
of course.
recruitment. We've just spent how long laughing at Emerson Royale. Like I don't trust the people who run Milan they can sack Fonseca. It's kind of similar to the Spurs situation. Listen to our Premier League pod for that. But like you can sack the person if you want, but are the people in charge going to pick a right person or back that person, or is it just going to repeat the cycle? Or maybe you go out and you get De Zerbi because he seems like he's not happy at Marseille, but you got to pay for him, and then he's a bit of a chaos agent. You don't know if he's not just going to set fire to the club. Like, there's no other managers in the league at the moment that are actually available that I would be like, okay, well, Milan, go and get him. Like, I think Palladino would have been, but he's perfectly happy at Fiorentina and doing well there. Like, who'd you go and get? Italiano from Bologna? Like, who are the managers in Serie A that you're throwing their name?
So I would go to Maurizio Sarri, Alberto Gilardino. There's two coaches that can actually, if you're forgetting about the whole transfer policy and all the fact that, behind the scenes, they probably won't even do that, right? But let's say hypothetically, you've got two coaches there that could potentially work with the squad. Gilardino has been under probably harsher conditions at Genoa, for example, and still able to get the most of those players and make them hard to beat, but also get them aspiring from an attacking point of view. Maurizio Sarri is probably a bit harder because I think he is quite stubborn and he would demand his own style of players, granted. But if you're going to say, are they both an upgrade on Fonseca? I would say yes. I think you've got in Gilardino someone that's aspiring. He's an ex-Milan player, so that probably buy him a bit more time as well, get the fans on side to get behind him. I think everyone can see outside of that kind of Milan bubble what he's achieved as well. Like in the circumstances, getting Genoa up into Serie A in the first place was genuinely quite an achievement, and he developed some really good players at that time as well. With Sarri, you know what you're going to get as well. As much as his tantrums and his, stigma around him, I think he does get the best out of players. And maybe in the likes of Rafael Leao, you need someone as stubborn like, Sarri to get the best out of him. And that's what they're crying out for, is someone to be more authoritative in that kind of dressing room. I think Sarri would be really good for certain players and getting the best. If you're looking at the moment, the way I look at it is like, Fonseca is not doing any better than Pioli did, and Pioli was probably in a high position at the same time.
He's doing worse than Pioli. Like he's absolutely doing worse than Pioli.
So, and you can see it even in this match, like the disconnect between the kind of midfield, the kind of defense, the balance of the midfield and the defense has always been an issue, even under Pioli. But at least there was a bit of a structure going on. Like I wasn't inspired by Pioli's football, but actually I feel sorry for him when you kind of look at it now. And you go, Fonseca, someone that I didn't genuinely think had a great time at Roma, but I think everyone kind of said, right, let's just forget about that. He's achieved good things at Lille. Let's see if he can bring it to Milan. I don't feel they've progressed. I feel we're at that point where we kind of just say, cut your losses now. Yes, we accept that it was a bad appointment, potentially bad recruitment on our side. But if you're going to get potentially two potential candidates that are free agents, don't forget, so they don't have to spend any money. It's just the wages here. they're both available right now. They could definitely do better.
They're both very good points. The only, again, I think the only thing with Sadi is it takes a long time. You're going to have to be super patient because he has to get in the players that he wants, and they have to learn his style of football. And I think they would have to show a level of patience towards the end of the season that would be similar to the patience they'd have to show Fonseca. Maybe it's worth it because you think that at the end, Sadi will get you to a better place because, he's won Serie A and he's got this experience. But I think you'd still be looking at a really quite difficult end of the season because the players would have to be learning Sadi ball on the fly. And I think it would still take a lot of patience. And they would be a lot of
You've got half a season to do it. You've got half a season to do it, and I think you kind of forgive it and go, if that's half a season now to embed that culture and then push on for next season, I think most Milan fans can get behind that. But like I say, Gilardino is another one that could just go, even as an interim kind of solution, he's someone that you can get your togetherness, you can build a culture around him. I think you put full trust into him because I think he would coach the players better than Fonseca's getting that kind of buy-in right now. I don't think he's necessarily getting the buy-in from the players right now.
No, well, it's clear that Teo and Leao don't like him as well, right? They're very
like him.
Big characters in that changing room. So I feel like he's obviously fighting a losing battle, and it'll be interesting to see if they do pull the trigger. But like I said, I think the issues are a bit higher up, but we'll see how it goes. Let's talk about Atalanta, though, because Andrea, they're bloody top of the table. They're 2 points clear at the top, and they're the top scorers, and they've got the joint third best defense in the league. This is a very stable, very good team. They're not as chaotic as past Atalanta teams. Do you think they have the stability to maintain this? They're now on a 5-game winning streak and, longer than that, and absolutely flying.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Adam was saying it before, the fact that they can, rest players, bring players in, change it up, they've got all the right components to win a title. The only question I have, and I think we saw it in that Milan game, is that there were moments where it could have gone the other way. It could have easily gone the other way. And that's a mentality thing of winning trophies, winning titles. Because winning a title is completely different to winning a, Europa League.
Yeah.
It's a long season. It's those away games where you're struggling, it's 0-0, what do you do? So I still question kind of that mentality side of things, how good it can get. But that result against Milan, I think, showed that they do have it in them because, like I said, it was a close game and they could have easily lost it, and they managed to find a way at the end. And, and the players coming on, like Retegui, you've got players coming on who are star quality, who are easily in the first team of any other team in Serie A. So, yeah, they've got all the right components. They're getting Scalvini back. Scamacca is back in training as well. So you've got those players who are should be in the team already if they weren't injured. So it can only add to the quality. So the quality in the depth is definitely there. It's just that mental strength in those tight games. We saw it against Milan, but they managed to come through. So let's see if they can carry that on in other games as well.
It feels like there's a real belief there at the moment. The players are really absolutely flying. You could see in the celebrations at the end as well, they're really up for this, and I think they can feel that there's an opportunity. It's starting to feel like there's a chance, and okay, people were kind of not assuming, but we're kind of expecting Napoli to run off and just go, and it's okay, they haven't. Inter stumbled a bit, and it's okay, no, we can really we've got a proper shot at this, so you can feel something happening there. And like you said, bringing off the top scorer in the league, you can bring him off the bench in 75th minute. It's a bit of a joke, really. And yeah, the depth, Kasunu again coming on, I really, really like that guy. In defense, they've got the depth and strength as well. So huge result for them. And yeah, keeps them top, puts them top of the table, 2 points clear and on a hell of a run. The next games they've got coming up, they're hosting Real Madrid midweek, which is pretty exciting. And then they have Cagliari away before they welcome Empoli at home. Empoli actually still doing pretty well. And then they go to Lazio away, and that's their last game of the season. So that Lazio game will be a really interesting one to finish the year. That'll be a great game to see. But let's go across to Milan's rivals, the other side of the city, and let's talk about Inter 3, Parma 1. Adam, did this feel like we got Inter back? They were playing their proper sexy football again.
Yeah, it 100% did. How classy was that? I mean, I wasn't expecting that kind of performance, that style of performance, given the Inter late that we've been seeing. It seemed lethargic, it seemed tired, but this was a completely rejuvenated Inter. If you look at the performance of Mkhitaryan, a guy that's so old now these days, but can still put on the sixpence. The way he kind of puts that volley in initially for Barella, I think it was, for that goal. It was absolutely magnificent. And I made a note of these stats as well. Like, he was the most creative player on the day in that particular match. But since joining Inter in 2022, he's already had 12 assists. That's only beaten by the likes of Charles de Ketelaere and Luis Alberto, who was previously at Lazio with 14. So, it seems like he was back to his very best in that respect. But yeah, the exuberance of that DiMarco finish was absolutely incredible. If you haven't gone and seen it on YouTube, I implore you, go and have a look at that goal. I love him for that celebration alone, but I mean, that sort of matched that finish, didn't it? And from a Marcus Thuram perspective, that was really important for him. But I think obviously a lot will be alluded to Lautaro as well. Yeah, not great, it's fair to say. And yeah, there's nothing to say about Parma. I think they were just outdone by classier side. There's nothing else they could do about it. They did offer on occasions, Cancelliere had opportunities, probably spaffed it a bit too hard. But yeah, I mean, from my point of view, this looks like the intervals, and it's scary if they're going into this period of the season with that kind of form, because that applies a lot of pressure on the teams that are around them. But also, if you think about it from a Champions League perspective, this is the time you want to get form. This is the time that you want to be pushing, and I suppose this is the right momentum for Inzaghi.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're absolutely spot on. It's great to see them back to their kind of free-flowing best. I just wanted to talk about DiMarco because I saw an interesting conversation this week when they were talking about who's the best left-back in the Premier League, who's the best left-back here. DiMarco is the best left-back in the world at the moment. Like, Andrea, there's no one that I can't see anyone that comes close to him, right? Defensively, he's solid and his attacking output is insane. Like, he's been such a key player for Inter this year, and he always seems to come up in big moments. But even here, like, he kind of opens the game. He has that spark that gets them going. Like, he's a really special player, right?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think he's the best, honestly. I think he like you said, he does everything. One thing I'd like to see more, and again, it's not even a criticism, it's actually, is that goal he scored. I feel like we don't see it as often, like, him cutting in, doing the 1-2s. He's always out wide a lot, and he can score some great long shots. So if he adds that to his game as well, it gets ridiculous at this point, how good he is, But so that's what I'm saying. Like, I just think he could even excel his game even more than what he has at the moment. So yeah, I'm really impressed with him, and I think at a back four and a back three, he could easily be the best in both. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, unbelievable finish from him. I do have to say I really enjoyed the Barella goal. The composure of that finish, just letting the defender fly past him before he stroked it into the far corner. A really, really beautiful finish. But Adam, you did kind of, not to dwell on the negatives, but you did kind of mention Lautaro, and it's an interesting conversation, I think. Like, obviously, a key, huge part of them winning the Scudetto last year was the fact that he was, like, scoring for fun, right? Do you think it could be the difference in what we're seeing as quite a tight Scudetto race? If he's not hitting those levels, could it be a big difference for Inter? Because DiMarco will get you goals, Thuram will get you goals, but you need that player who's going to, like, if Retegui's hitting big numbers, Inter are going to need someone who hits big numbers as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously we thought maybe after last season that maybe he got over that kind of persistent consistency issue that he has. But something's got to be there as a blocker for him right now. I can't put my finger on as to what is stopping him being the kind of clinical self that he was last season. There was opportunities that looked harder and he'd easily put in the back of the net last season, whereas this season, even the simplest ones, opportunities that he seems to be getting, he's fluffing. The ironic aspect about this is he seems to be doing it for Argentina. There was the chance that he did in the international break where he does that overhead almost style kick, and it was absolutely insane. And we're thinking, right, is this the Lautaro that we've been waiting for? But there seems to be almost like I don't know, is it an attitude thing, or I can't really work it out, Rory. But yeah, he could be the difference. He could be the difference. And we know with Lautaro, when he goes on the run like this, only needs something to come off his backside, and then suddenly he gets a knack for it. So potentially that's all he needs. But yeah, I think the longer this goes on, you do kind of worry about that kind of clinical edge that Inter have, because Taremi hasn't really, I suppose, passed on what he had at Porto. He hasn't really transitioned that into this Inter side. And obviously, we did mention about Thuram having a dry spell as well. You know, it was almost a month and a half before he started scoring again. So I think that is a worry, because, you know, Thuram, again, his game's kind of changed a little. We knew he was the kind of hardworking target man like striker last season, whereas this season it seems like maybe they've transitioned that position a little bit more for him to like accommodate his desires. I don't know. There certainly needs to be a think about what they do with Lautaro, and maybe do they go out into the marketplace and try and look at what the options are. I know there's been a lot of talk about Jonathan David, for example, being signed at the end of the season, but do they kind of look at it and kind of go, do we gamble on getting a striker now to push us on for the second half of the season? But not just that. I mean, if they want to maintain Champions League like credentials as well, I think they couldn't do any badly by trying to get someone out there that potentially could push them on. The only issue I find is probably the financial aspect. I don't know what the situation there is and whether they'd have to move someone on. But at the same time, we're waiting for, and I appreciate he's not a striker, but Taijan Buchanan to come back into the fold. Will that kind of give a new impetus for this inside and maybe relax kind of the creation side of things as well? Not saying that's definitely going to resolve the issue for Lautaro, but certainly something to think about as well.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I think what we do know about Inter is that it's going to be a free transfer and it's going to be like a stroke of genius. Like that's what they're going to do. But obviously, they've been trying to plaster over this kind of crack for a while with short-term solutions. So it was Arnautovic, and then now it's Taremi. It's like, right, this older striker that we can maybe get a year, 2 years out of. He'll get 5-10 goals a season, and we can take Lautaro off in the 60th minute every so often. And it's just this kind of sticker that they've been this crack they've been sticking over for a while. So I think you're right. It does need to be addressed. With Lautaro, it always feels like it's in his head. It always feels like it's in his head to me. Like, and maybe this is just revisionism now, but I seem to remember after they went out to Atleti in the Champions League last year, he kind of had a bit of a meltdown afterwards and a bit of a dry spell, and there was a bit of a existential crisis, and then it took him a while to get back going again. And maybe it's just one of those where he's just, with every miss, I'm kind of seeing it with Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal at the minute, but with every miss it feels bigger and bigger and bigger, and it feels like longer, right? So I don't know, he's clearly a very good striker, but I think also maybe the fact that Thuram has changed that role has adapted or changed the dynamics a little bit. But overall, very positive for Inter. In the table, that does leave them 3 points behind Atalanta at the top and 1 point behind Napoli. Inter still the favourites, Andrea? Do you still have them as favourites? Where do you see them in this race?
Yeah, I still have them as favourites. I think the experience, the quality they have. I think I do question, though, I do agree with the striker situation. I think it seems like they need someone in January, though, because it's like you said, they've always papered over the cracks that someone to come on, but now they need someone to actually step up over Martinez, and they've never had that issue before. It's always been, it's either to rest him or to add a striker on to score a goal. So, I do think that when it comes to deeper into the season, you'll start to see the experience of Inter coming through a bit more. That Mkhitaryan performance is quite promising as well for Inter fans, and I think if he continues that, it's going to help a lot. But I think they've got the experience going into it that they'll find a way to get over the line.
They're still very much the ones that are going to be feeling more confident out of all of those teams. I think they'll still be quietly confident. They host Leverkusen. No, they go to Leverkusen this week. Their next game is Lazio away. Then they have Udinese at home and Como at home, and then Cagliari away. So a few games there that are definitely winnable. The Lazio one away will be an interesting one. Inter's recent record off the top of my head against Lazio isn't fantastic, so it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. But those are our 3 headline games this week. Let's quickly go through the other results. I'm just going to run down and see, as I see Juventus 2, Bologna 2. Here we go, Adam. Talk us through this one. Bangula, he only scores bangers, and he saved Thiago's blushes, because this would have been a big loss at home, but they managed to get out of there with a point, right?
Yeah, and I think we have to give a lot of credit to Bologna because of the way that they played in that first half in particular. They brushed aside this Juventus side, got in their faces, made it difficult. This was the Bologna side that we've been kind of craving for this season, even though we knew that obviously they've transitioned, they've moved on players, and obviously have a new man at the helm. But it would be typical Italiano to throw away a goal lead, and that's what happens. Andrea knows too well about these sort of circumstances. And Bologna did it, and he came out in the press afterwards saying that they dropped points. You know, the manner that they conceded was, you know, it was just really disappointing from their point of view. And you know, I think you have to credit Juventus in terms of the grittiness to get themselves back into the position. You know, 10 cup minors, seeing a goal for the first time in what seems like a long time now. But yeah. It's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? Because Thiago Motta got sent off as well in this match. That's probably, you know, something we haven't actually necessarily seen from him from a kind of sideline perspective. So him losing his cool is interesting to see. But I think also we talk about pressure on Fonseca. I think the pressure is starting to take its toll on Thiago Motta. You know, it really is. It's weird saying that because Juventus are beaten, but it feels almost like an Udinese.
Yeah, it doesn't really
it? Feels
count,
like they're just
it?
drawing games.
Really,
they're not doing anything with it. And yeah, the pressure's caving in, you know, because I think there's only so much the Juventus fan base will kind of accept in terms of what's going on right now. And I appreciate there is an injury crisis. There is also the fact that you've got players that aren't necessarily delivering. You know, Vlahovic, again, having opportunities in this match, not converting. I think if they get even 25 million, they'll probably say, yes, please, I'll take that right now. I genuinely don't know what happens with Juventus going into January. I think they do need to get some reinforcements, but can they actually feasibly do it? I don't know. And yeah, they're probably relying on Arkadiusz Milik, who's probably the person you don't want to be relying on, given his injury kind of history. So yeah, interesting scenario for Motta. Good point, I suppose, from a Juventus perspective, but more of the same questions kind of arisen from this. And I'd say also just a quick note, Tommaso Pobega, a bit of redemption for him because actually he did really well in this match as well.
I really enjoyed the Bologna English account on Twitter where like 73% of the world is water, the other 20% is covered by Tommaso Perego. I was like, a week ago he was getting sent off for being an absolute dickhead. Like, let's not praise him too much, eh? But I did enjoy that tweet. But Andrea, is this Motta thing, is it all grimly predictable that this is a project manager? It was going to take a while to turn it round. It wasn't going to be as good a start as everyone expected. There was going to be pressure. They sack him because there's too much pressure. And then was this all grimly predictable? Were we all too optimistic when he was appointed? Because I kind of feel stupid to think it was going to go any other way now.
Yeah, I did. I think it's hard to say it was predictable just because of how well he did at Bologna with, you know, lesser quality players per se. But I do think it's a stylistic thing. It's such a big change. You've got to remember they're coming from like a good 3 years of Allegri ball, which is, well, Allegri ball is quite even, to put a name on it, it's a bit weird as well. But the football that they were playing before was horrendous, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got a new manager it's really modern, it's really expansive, it's really, you know, and the kind of stylistic players that they have, you know, you've got players like Gatti who aren't really ball-playing centre-backs. They're more, you know, typical, you know, no-nonsense Stoke City centre-back. Yeah. You know, so I think you've got to kind of cater to the fact that, like, you've got these kind of hardcore kind of different players that don't really suit his kind of style, which eventually they're going to evolve and, you know, bring new players in. But I feel like you can still see signs. I think the difference between Motta and Fonseca is that with Motta you can clearly see that there is an identity in their play, and even though they're not kind of matching it at the moment, I still think with a season in, with a few more transfers in, they can. And we've got to remember as well, some of these players, you know, Yildiz very young. You've got some really young talent, raw talent that just need to kind of learn their game more, get the experience, and start winning more as well. Because I think Juventus has lost that as well. Obviously, they've lost that ability to kind of be winning games. Like it doesn't feel like they go into games thinking that they're definitely going to win. So it's a whole cultural and stylistic thing they've had to change. So I think it's a bit harsh to be critical on Motta at the moment. However, football doesn't wait for you either. No. You've got to pick up the results. No. So I do appreciate the questions as well. I think it is right. And the draws are not good enough because in the end, they feel like defeats because you end up having, 6 wins out of 15. Is not a good look. And again, a team like Juventus, with the financials they have, they really need to be in Champions League. They can't afford to be out of Europe, So it's kind of those kind of questions go to your head as well. So there's a lot to think about, but certainly I do think it's a project that is worthwhile. I feel like it will come through in the next few years for sure. But the striker situation is the key one they've got to fix because I don't think Vlahovic is the guy. Yeah. So they need to replace him, and maybe we might start to see a bit more turn in their kind of fortune.
No, I think they both need a break. Like they need a fresh break now. Like Vlahovic needs to go somewhere else. They need to move on. It's reached that point where it's not going to turn around. I just hope that Motta gets the patience because if you think Milan aren't a patient club, like Juve aren't a patient club, like at all, and I think they really have to ride this out and be like, no, we're sticking with this guy. We believe in this guy because I don't know if he gets the time or not, but I hope he does. Very, very nearly a famous result for Bologna, but it wasn't to be. Elsewhere, huge win for Roma. I'm going to say one of their biggest wins in their recent history. If they didn't win this game, you don't know where their season was going. But they managed to get it over the line against Lecce. They were definitely helped a little bit. Krstovic scored. I put him in my Fantacalcio. He finally got a goal, thank God. But Adam, Roma, in the end, it was pretty comfortable. My highlight was when the defender almost scored an own goal past Falcone, but he had to catch it. I really enjoyed that moment. What did you make of this game?
I have to give credit to Lecce because in the first half it would have been easy to kind of fall off after the goal from Salamakers, but actually they got into their faces, they made it difficult and they countered. And, that Koulibaly penalties that you alluded to, such a terrible kind of challenge from Abdul Hamid. I don't know what he was thinking of because he completely swipes him and like just doesn't get anything on the ball. So he basically gifted Lecce the kind of goal in that sense to come back. And what a penalty, by the way. What a strike. That was incredible. When I was watching, I was like, Jesus, you want to be on the end of that. But yeah, credit to Roma, the way they came out in the second half. And Kouane, again, just love him. At the moment, he's my favourite midfielder. He feels like such a project player to have in Football Manager, and just put him into any side right now. I could see him really dominating the team and evolving a team around him, to be fair. But good performance. What Ranieri needed, what Roma needed, and pulls them into mid-table. And hopefully they push on from now on. I'm not going to say it definitely is because we know what Roma are like, but definitely a good victory from that point of view. I think that is, by the way, third or fourth time that they've scored 4 goals in 2024. So, yeah, probably needed from a fan base perspective.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Cornet finish as well. It was really calm and composed, that finish. He took that extra second before he put it in. Really beautiful goal. Elsewhere, Empoli 4, Hellas Verona 1. They keep being very accommodating hosts. Empoli having such a low-key great season for how little money and wages they have. They are currently in 10th. 19 points, not even thinking about relegation. They're just here for a good time. And Hellas Verona allowed them to have that good time. Esposito getting 2 goals and Colombo with a goal as well, which is exciting to see. So beautiful that Hellas Verona, it has to be this year. Venezia Como, if you didn't see this, guys, don't worry, nobody saw it. I don't know if you saw the TV cameras, but I was trying to watch the highlights. I was like, was that the goal? Was that a goal? I could not see a thing because of the wind and rain. It looked absolutely horrendous to be in that stadium. The football wasn't much better, but there was a late kind of equaliser from Oristano. We've been calling him out, but he got the equaliser. There should have been a winner, but it was just offside. which prevented Venezia from getting the win. But Como and Fabregas very much under pressure. The rumours are that he could be sacked pretty soon. Udinese are currently beating Monza 2-1. Has Lovric scored? No, he hasn't. God damn it. But Andrea, more importantly, Fiorentina beat Cagliari 1-0. Cataldi with a hell of a finish. Did you enjoy this game? Because I didn't.
No, I was in pain. It was horrible, honestly. That second half, it felt a bit embarrassing as well because it's like Cagliari. It was like Cagliari that were Fiorentina and they were home and they were dominating. It was horrible. It was horrible. Yeah, but they got the job done.
Yeah.
But again, I did check that a few weeks ago when I said that stat, and it is true that Fiorentina haven't conceded in the 60th minute onwards. And I think it's crucial. In Serie A this whole season, they haven't conceded. And I feel like these type of games, they would have conceded, and they haven't. So I've got to give credit there. But I'm a bit worried about... It's feeling a bit like how I feel with Napoli, you know? Where it's like, you're getting these wins, but...
The steam's running out.
Something's going to go wrong. Yeah, so I'm a bit worried, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts.
I was going to be fair, it was quite a rotated team. It was a rotated team.
Goal.
Like the attack was very different.
Oh, that's a good goal.
So I think shows a little bit of depth against Cagliari, which I think is important. But we're going to leave that there, guys. That was Serie A this weekend. Absolutely loved that. We're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look forward to all the European action this midweek. We'll see you on the other side. And we are back. Welcome back. It's time to talk about the European action this midweek with all the Italian teams. Let's do it. Starting in Germany as Inter travel to Leverkusen. That is going to be an interesting one. Leverkusen not doing as well as last year, obviously. Inter looking like they're in form. This could be an interesting one. It would be a big win for Inter to go there and get a win. That would be quite the statement. Still yet to concede a goal in the Champions League. Inter, I want to say, absolutely incredible record there. As we said earlier in the show, Atalanta will be hosting Real Madrid. That is proper European, not heritage, but feels like a big night. I absolutely love that. But the game here we wanted to focus on, Milan hosting Red Star. This city is going to be a nightmare to walk through tomorrow. And Juve are hosting Man City. Two teams that are in individual runs of form, I suppose. Adam, are we excited about this? I might avoid this game like the plague. I think this is going to be unwatchable. Like, what do you expect to happen?
It could be, like you describe it, really painful for those that watch it. It's not going to be pretty. Man City, I expect to edge this, but I can't even predict the rhythm of this game. I can't even tell you how it's going to play out because both sides, as you alluded to, aren't in great veins of form. And yeah, I'm not expecting much. I think if Juventus can keep the scoreline to 1-0, then they've done a good job here, potentially. But in the same breath, I would say Man City aren't great as well. So huge opportunity for Juventus to nick something, potentially. But I'm not going to even predict that, Rory, because I think that's too far-fetched.
I'm going to throw to you, Andrea. Do you think this is a chance for Motta to get a statement win against Man City? Silent us haters?
I actually have a feeling they're going to win. I don't know why.
Okay.
I've had a feeling this whole week, since thinking about the fixture. I just think, again, it's an unpredictable game, and I think that will work in Juve's favour. It's just whether, again, for me, Motta this season has been a bit weird with his team selection. So let's see, like Yildiz being in sub sometimes I don't understand. So let's see what team he puts out there, I think, as well. But yeah, it's an unpredictable game, to be honest. But I'd like to say I could see them winning it. I think this is the best time to play him as well. So why not?
Why not, indeed? Let's hope so. I'm actually going to be supporting Juventus because anything to just dent Man City's confidence, I'm all here for. In the Europa League, we have Roma hosting Braga. That's quite exciting. We have, I'm scrolling down, Ajax hosting Lazio. That's a big one. And then we have, that's all the Italian teams. And then we have the Conference League and Fiorentina. But Andrea, who are you up against this week?
This is not Noah, is it?
It's not Noah. It's not Noah. I think he's still recovering from getting beaten 8-0 last time. Who is it? Lask.
Last, yeah.
How are we feeling ahead of this one?
It's another tough game. European pedigree on both sides. I think we have to jazz it up a bit. We have to make the Conference League seem like it's a really
It's a legit competition. All we can say, right?
And the clubs are amazing, and Champions League worthy. No, it should be a rotated team. I think it'll just be like a 2-1, 2-0. Yeah.
Nice. I can't wait. I bet you can't wait either, listener. Adam, it is time for you to take us through the Serie A weekend. What can we look forward to?
Yes, thank you, Rory. So we'll get into game week round 16. We'll start off on Friday the 13th at 7:45 UK time, and Empoli host Torino. We then move into Saturday's game, starting at 2 p.m. We have the classic that is Calgary at home to Atalanta before we move into the 5 p.m. kickoff time. Udinese at home to Napoli. Before 7:45, we see Juventus at home to Venezia. Then we move into Sunday's fixtures. So starting off at 11:30, we've got Lecce at home to Monza. Then at 2 p.m, we've got Bologna at home to Fiorentina, which could be a feisty affair. But otherwise, we move into Parma at home to Hellas Verona before we move into the 5 p.m. kickoff time. Como at home to Roma. And then at 7:45, Milan host Genoa. Before on Monday, we've got quite the game here, lads. And unfortunately, it is 7:45, so we'll potentially miss it because we'll be recording. But it is Lazio at home to Inter. What a game that could potentially be for the cap of round 16 games there, Rory.
Beautiful. Well, I am incredibly excited. I hope you're excited too, listener. Andrea, where can they find you when they want to find your stuff so they can keep up with how Fiorentina get on against Lask?
They can find me on TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Calcio Fiore. I mean, if you really want to keep up to date with that, I will do a live goal update, everything, commentary throughout. So it'd be worth it. So come join it.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to be there. Adam, anything to say before I send the listener home?
Just if you happen to be of the Apple variant in terms of listening to the podcast, leave us a review. Really appreciate it so we can get the broader spectrum of your opinions. So even if you think we're a bunch of cunts, just write it down because it's no worse than what we've already got on there. So please go ahead.
We would love it. We would love it. Guys, thank you for joining us. You can find us on Blue Sky. You can find us on Blue Sky, on TikTok, and on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down here. As Adam said, leave us a rating and a subscription, whatever, on your podcast app of choice. Check out our Premier League episode, and we'll see you next time. Ciao, a dopo.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.